Hello everybody and thank you for joining this presentation. My name is Dr. Omri Allouche and I head the research department at Gong.io. I wanted to talk today about how we use AI at Gong to understand human conversations. So I want to take you back to some time in the 50s when handsome men sat down in comfortable sofas with their quintessential rotary dial phone and a cigarette and tried to think how to reach the hearts and minds of the customers. Moving back to our days, a typical marketing meeting looks more like this. Dashboards, graphs, KPIs, and a data-driven approach to understand what works and what doesn't. And today, a similar transformation is happening in the field of sales. It might seem counterintuitive. We were taught that you're either born a salesperson or you never will be one. But sales is actually a very data-oriented field, where there's a clear binary outcome of a sales order. You either won or lost the deal. And at the end of the day, your salary is largely determined by the commission of won deals. Gong helps salespeople and other customer-facing roles to have better conversations with customers. It automatically records, transcribes, and analyzes all calls, reads emails, and other forms of communication and data, and allows organizations to say goodbye to opinions and hello to reality. So if you held a 15 minutes long phone conversation, instead of a single meaningless timeline, you would understand who spoke when and what was said with the full transcript. It will divide the conversation into meaningful segments and identify the topic that was discussed in each part of the conversation. Gong also analyzes the video of the call and identifies webcam, presentations, browser demos, etc. Along with CRM and emails data, the VP of Sales can quickly understand the status of each deal in the pipeline of her team. She can see who is taking part in the conversation from the prospect side and their level of engagement, the overall sentiment, the next steps that were set, and more. Gong thus provides better coaching, faster onboarding of new hires, better understanding of the market and contemporary trends, and in general helps all customer-facing roles have better conversations. To support all of this, we have a few dozen models running in production on large scale. These are models related to speech processing, NLP, video analysis, and predictive modeling. This suite of models contribute in three different aspects that we call three pillars. People intelligence, increasing the productivity of team members. Deal intelligence, increasing win rates of sales opportunities. And market intelligence, providing insights on competition, the main questions of customers, and market trends, helping to increase market share. Gong has a pretty unique dataset. Calls data is made of spontaneous speech, and it's very different than Wikipedia or news data that most NLP models use for training. It contains many disfluencies, false starts of sentences, and generally much more complex and sometimes incorrect grammatical structures. This makes transfer learning much more challenging for us. We also have tons of meaningful metadata that we can use in our models. We have, for a call, for example, the names of its participants, the related companies, special terms, the stages of the deal. If it's a demo call or negotiation, we have the text and data about previous calls that were done and many other things that we can use to actually improve the transcription accuracy and insights that we get from the call. We also have available additional data about the company, including its emails, website content, etc. In this talk, I will present how we extract data from emails regarding the competitors and names of products of the company and use them to improve the quality of our speech recognition engine. In Gong, we also have multiple levels of repeating conversations. The same salesperson can have similar conversations with dozens of different customers. And the same salesperson and customer can have multiple conversations in different stages of the sales deal. In addition, multiple salespersons have similar conversations with different customers. Gong was founded 5 years ago and now employs 400 people and serves over 1,000 customers. We raised $330 million up to date, with the latest round at a $2.2 billion valuation. We process over 1 million calls a month and over 1 million emails a day. In this talk, I'd like to present some of our AI models, discuss the differences between real-world models and generic off-the-shelf solutions, and with that, highlight the importance of using context and a problem-specific approach to provide the best possible data-driven solution for a business problem. Gong provides transcription in over 10 languages. Since each language has its own speech-to-text model, we need to know the language of the call before having its transcription. We therefore perform language identification using short speech segments of 10 to 20 seconds. The network for this includes a low-level frequency feature extraction, a few TD&N layers, statistical pooling layers that are dense fully connected embedding layers, and an output softmax. And we train the network using thousands of speakers so it identifies the speaker identity among all possible speakers. So much like one gets image embedding from the last layer or lower layers of a CNN network trained on ImageNet, or the word embeddings one gets from the algorithms like Word2Vec, we can get embeddings for speech segments. These encode parameters like the gender of the speaker, accent, language, age, and even parameters about the recorded channel like background noise, audio compression, etc. The embedding size is usually several hundreds. Identifying a new language requires about 10 hours of speech in that language, and it's also important to remove non-speech events. Empirically, we saw that if music isn't filtered out, our language identification model will mistake music to be French. The embeddings we get from this training can also be used in other speech-related modules like diarization and voice print, as we'll soon see. Next, let's talk about detecting the identity of the speaker using her voice print signature. If we start with an audio recording on a single channel, we apply a diarization algorithm to separate the single track into multiple speakers. This identifies when speaker 1 was talking and when speaker 2 and 3. But we still don't know who speaker 1 is. Using voice print matching, we identify that speaker 1 is Taylor and speaker 2 is Dave. There are actually two different steps for this: enrollment, creating a voiceprint model for a user, and identification, using the voiceprint model to identify a user in a call. So how can we actually achieve that? A basic approach is to ask the user to record a few preset sentences in her voice and build a voiceprint model based on these recordings. But this obviously requires an active effort from our user and doesn't necessarily reflect the same sound characteristics of the user in a real environment of a recorded call. As an alternative, we could ask the user to mark her talking track in existing calls. Tell us which of these is you, Taylor. And based on the track that Taylor marks, we could create a voice print profile. But what we actually do in Gong is a more creative approach that uses the context of the call and its metadata with some machine learning magic. Since we know who organizes the call and have the list of invitees, we can take the collection of calls and try to identify a speaker that appears in all of these calls, or at least in a vast majority of them. If we ensure that the participants of the calls don't overlap, the shared person is the call organizer. In this cluster map, each row and column is a single speaker in a collection of calls we analyze. You can see the cluster of speakers with similar voice characteristics at the bottom right corner. That is mapped in our algorithm into a voice print model for the call organizer. This gives us the ability to infer the voice print of a user without any active enrollment using metadata and some smart ML tricks. In automatic speech recognition, context can be of great help as well. In Gong, we developed our own speech recognition engine that allows us to get much better transcription accuracy for our own domain of sales. This includes acronyms like CSV, company names, etc. It also costs much less than commercial off-the-shelf solutions. Gong supports transcription in over 10 languages. Models are based on Caldi, an open source ASR framework that's also available through NVIDIA's NGC. We've also experimented with end-to-end deep learning architectures and got comparable transcription accuracy, but the inference time is considerably larger for these deep learning models without GPU optimization. When performing automatic speech recognition, we start with a speech signal and perform some basic speech processing to get the signal representation. In its core, a speech recognition engine consists of three different parts: an acoustic model, a lexicon, and a language model. The acoustic model is in charge of mapping the speech features into different phonemes. The training of the acoustic model relies heavily on GPUs. We mostly use NVIDIA's V100 for this, with an average training time for an experiment of about 1 week. The language model gives the probability of a word given the previous word spoken so far. It can be based on n-grams, RNNs, transformers, etc. It is usually computed from a large corpus of text from the domain. The language model itself can depend on the context. Since different companies use different vocabularies and terms, and therefore a different language model, we can build the language model per company. We can also use different language models for the company and the prospect side, or different language models for the demo call and for the negotiation stage. Incorporating this context allows us to improve the results of our speech recognition engine. The WFST combines together the acoustic model, the lexicon, and the language model into a graph of the probabilities of each word in the sequence. It also turns out that while non-frequent words have poor language model representation, they actually have a high business value. This can be the names of participants in the call, names of companies, names of competitors, products, etc., and maybe some special terms like acronyms. All these are very important in the context of understanding human conversations, but are often missed in speech recognition engines. In Gong, we extract these automatically from emails and use them to improve our ASR results. So an example would be a conversation between Omri from Gong, Liron and Jensen from NVidia, and Michael from Billybug. When training a language model, we replace the names with a generic placeholder for a specific class, so we can actually learn more generic representations. During inference, the Gong speech recognition engine gets the names of participants and companies as a supplementary context and performs a G2P stage that translates a written word into its pronunciation. We then build these into the WFST. So at inference time, the engine takes into account the provided context, leading to significant improvement in detection of names of companies, products, people, and other special terms. This is done without requiring building a new language model and transcription engine for each call. We train our models on NVIDIA's V100 GPUs. We only train models in the cloud and not on-prem, in part to ensure the privacy and security of our data. We switch to CPUs for stages that don't benefit greatly from heavy GPU usage. We are launching soon an experiment with the new DGX A100 and are very excited to experience the expected speedups with this new power horse. So, with all of this, I wanted to maybe share a few Gong tips for successful conversations collected after analyzing tens of millions of calls. The first insight relates to all interactions and conversations, and not just to sales. Listening is much more important than talking. Data shows that star reps, star salespeople, talk much less than bottom performing reps. This follows the saying that we have 2 ears and just 1 mouth for a reason. Data also shows that the longer the customer talks uninterrupted, the better. If you let the other side talk more and share information, you'd be able to win more deals because you better understand the pain and the specific needs of that particular customer. The second tip also holds for any type of conversations. It's better to have an interactive back and forth dialogue, kind of like a coffee shop conversation. Data shows that more speaker switches per minute are correlated with higher close rates. So a conversation should not look like this, with very long monologues of a salesperson and a few short interruptions by the prospect. It's much better to have a balanced conversation with lots of speaker transitions and open-ended questions. Questions are also very important. And data shows that while average reps ask most of their questions in the beginning of the conversation, the star reps ask questions throughout the conversation and thus get better understanding of the customer needs. The third tip is that competition is often a good thing. Discussing the competition can actually improve your conversion rates, especially in early stages. Star reps are not afraid to acknowledge the competition and talk about it, leading to more trust and an open conversation. The fourth tip is that you should always dictate the rhythm and the interaction. In the words of Malcolm Gladwell in The Tipping Point, part of what it means to have a powerful personality is that you can draw others into your own rhythms and dictate the terms of the interaction. If we look at the talk speed, we see that the talk speed of a salesperson is higher than that of the prospect. And interestingly, the star reps have an ability to draw the prospect to their own talk speed and get him excited, which I personally find quite fascinating. The fifth tip is that you should remember to talk business. Star reps spend more time talking about business related topics, a huge difference. Examples of business related topics are ROI, the business challenges of the prospect, the agenda and the time of the project, and the ecosystem for making decisions. Star reps also talk more about the value of the sold solution and not just about its features. The sixth insight is the importance of establishing the value of your product before you really talk about its price. We analyzed when star reps and average reps talk about pricing in their conversations. We can see that in orange, the average reps talk about pricing throughout the conversations, with maybe a peak in the beginning. But the star reps actually bring up pricing the most after talking about the value of the project for 30 plus minutes. The seventh and final tip is actually very relevant to COVID times as well. When holding conversations, turn on your video and share your webcam. Data shows that it leads to significant increases in sales both when the sales rep and the prospect do it. At the end of the day, technology is less important than people and people interactions. I want to thank the research group and the entire Gong team for the exciting research that they lead. I want to thank NVidia for the invitation, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of the things that we've learned along the way. Thank you.